Louis C.K. says the rumors are true. He made a statement saying these stories are true about the alleged masturbation in front of multiple women over many years. He said the stories are true. At the time, I said to myself that what I did was okay because I never showed a woman my dick without asking first, which is also true. But what I learned later in life, too late, is that when you have power over another person, asking them to look at your dick isn't a question, it's a predicament for them. He said, the power I have over these women is that they admired me and I wielded that power irresponsibly. I have spent my long and lucky career talking and saying what I want. I will now step back and take a long time to listen. The charges were many over the years in a lot of different circumstances, but the through line was that the thing he liked to do was have people watch him masturbate. There's a lot to unpack, but first we'll start with this. It's not exactly apology because he never says he's sorry. He says, I have been remorseful for my actions, which is more how he feels about it, but he's not like, I apologize to the people, but he does display signs of contrition. What do you think?
Well, the first thing is I think it's great that you point out that he doesn't, there's no combination of the words I'm sorry or I apologize. He does say like, I reconcile, I'm remorseful, I regret.
Well, remorseful it's weird because I am sorry and remorseful are synonyms. I show signs of remorse, signs of sorrow, I'm sorry. But I apologize is one of those weird words where you have to say those words. And you can say I'm sorry and that is the same as I apologize, but I am remorseful sounds like an equivocation.
Yeah, and it kind of goes along with some of the strange justifications. For example, when he says, it is true that I did ask before I whipped out my dick. What I think this brought up to me is that in September, the New York Times asked him when he was doing a press junket for his movie, I Love You Daddy, which is now, that release has been canceled by The Orchard. They asked him, probably knowing full well that they were gonna be releasing this story at that time about these rumors. And he absolutely dismissed it because public opinion hadn't swayed then. The Harvey Weinstein case had not broken, or they hadn't broken that story yet. And he denied the rumors. He said, I'm not even gonna really comment on this because then it makes the rumor bigger than it is. When he was pressed again by the New York Times, he said they're rumors, that's all it is, there's no truth to it. That's a flat out lie. So this statement that he has released is not because he sort of wrestled with his emotions and decided that it was the right thing to come forward. He got caught, and that's why he's releasing this statement. It's not that he felt sorry and he sort of pulled like a Quentin Tarantino who came out pretty much unsolicited and said, I was complicit in a lot of this bad behavior, I'm calling myself out. He got called out, and before that had happened, when the New York Times gave him the opportunity in September, just 2 months ago, to out himself for this bad behavior, he refused to do it. And he denied them and then he diminished it as saying they were rumors when he knew full well that there was truth to this. So I'm not impressed by this. You sometimes see people online being like, wow, he owned up to it. Like, nah, he didn't own up to shit. He got caught.
He got caught. Well, that's all true. He did get caught. But if we want to just try to find some kind of shred of a silver lining with Louis C.K., he did, but he admits it though. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. Like he lied to the New York Times prior to. I'm gathering that in August he didn't think that the shitstorm of sexual assault and sexual misconduct allegations would be what they are now in November 2017. But I will say that out of all the people that have been caught red-handed doing this, at least he did go on the record and say, yes, I did do this. So I mean that has to stand for a shred of something. I'm not into comedy the way you guys are. So I just now have been turning on Louis C.K. in the last year. I see he does strike me as the type of dude that would want to paw his dick in front of someone and watch him.
Yeah, he talks about how he masturbates all the time. It keeps him sane, he said.
Yeah, I mean,
keeps him from murdering people.
And he has two daughters. Yes, he has kids. So that to me is what's disturbing. Is just that if I had my own children, my own biological children, I have 2 daughters now, they're my stepchildren, but I would be pissed, mortified, and somewhat violently aggressive towards anyone who would want to masturbate in front of my 2 daughters. So for him actually having his own biological children that are young women, you would think like, wow, Louis C.K., come on, man. Like, would you want some dude doing this to your daughter? So, and then I also cannot get behind these Kevin Spacey's, people who are like, I'm going to rehabilitation for my problem. I'm like, what is that at this stage in your life? What what is that going to passages on Malibu gonna do for you? Is it weird
though when I hear like masturbate in front of people? It's such a deviant behavior. It's like I would be able to wrap my mind around it more if he asked people just, can I have sex with you?
Yeah.
At the workplace. I can wrap my mind around that more. It strangely makes it weirder, and on the one hand worse, but on the other hand better, that he's not like raping people.
Assaulted, yeah.
He's like forcibly holding people down and raping them. He's just like asking them if he can masturbate in front of them, and if they say no, he won't. He won't do it.
He's probably a voyeur though, you know what I mean? Or an exhibition.
But it's the opposite. It's an exhibition. I mean, and if you look at like the experience of standing on a stage and telling jokes, I often look at my own job as like, what the fuck am I actually doing? I'm just doing things that make me feel good, and then people are watching it. Like that, in a way, is kind of like masturbation. Granted, it's not like a lewd sexual act, of course, on stage, but like people tell dirty jokes on stage.
Just one thing, sometimes if he asked and the person said no, like in the case of comedian Rebecca Corey, then he was like, all right, I'm not gonna masturbate in front of you, sorry, I have issues. But in the other case, there was, like when he was on a phone call with a woman and he was masturbating over the phone, he did not ask for consent in that case. And then there were other incidences where after the two women comedians, Ms. Goodman and Ms. Wolof, had said, please stop masturbating, he kept doing it. So there were times when he did ask for consent, but it's not a blanket thing where it's like, well, he asked, and when they said no, he didn't. What's wrong with that? Like, that's not fully true. It is in part true, but the full truth is that he didn't always respect women's wishes.
Right, so it seems like he's trying to have justified that. There's still all that weird justification that it's okay. The problem I have with his wording is how many times he says admired me. He frames it continually as these women admired me. I had power because they admired me. Everyone, he says it multiple times. And that framing, well, I get it. He did have power in comedy and many people admired him. If he's on a set and he's asking someone to watch him masturbate, it's possible, Louis, I hate to tell you, that you have power just because you have power. And not because they admire you.
Exactly.
You might have power because if you say something, you could get them fired, and they could find you utterly repulsive, and they might just be and I'll tell you something, talent producers that handle like special guest stars often fucking hate every guest star and are not impressed by anyone. So the idea that you're asking a producer on the show to watch you masturbate and they are consenting to it, it disturbs me, and it's so vain.
It's
and
narcissism.
Narcissistic to say that it's because you remind. And when I look through an apology or a statement of contrition or whatever it is, you look for some level of learning, and things like qualifying it by saying, I asked them first, even though it comes to light that he didn't, even when they said no, he kept doing it, and qualifying it by saying like, they admired me, implies that like they're your secret admirer and they would write you a Valentine if they could. No, that's not what it is. They have an admiration maybe for your name or the clout your name brings with it. But to say that they're doing this because they admired you multiple times throughout your like 5-paragraph statement is a little disturbing.
Another thing that stuck out to me was towards the end of the statement, he says, I also, I regret the negative attention this brought onto my manager, Dave Becky. Dave Becky is a big comedy manager. He represents Kevin Hart, Aziz Ansari, Amy Schumer. He works for 3 Arts Entertainment, which is huge when it comes in the comedy world. Like that's if you want to be repped, like that's the place to go.
That company used to give out the best assistant gifts. They would give you a leather jacket.
So Dave Becky is Louis C.K.'s manager, and he says, I regret the negative attention. He was just trying to mitigate circumstances that I had brought on. Like he is not complicit in this at all. But that's just not the case from what we hear from these women, is that, and Dave Becky denies that he ever threatened anyone, and I'm not saying, I don't think that anyone has ever said that he threatened them, but he did make it pretty clear that when people started telling these stories around town, and this was an open secret in the comedy world, that Louis C.K. engaged in masturbating in front of women and sexual misconduct and just sort of like gross behavior. Like it was an open secret. Dave Becky would always sort of like go around and discourage people and their managers from talking about this and trying to keep people quiet. I'm not saying he's like the mafia, but like he did try and keep people quiet. And here's the deal, that's bad management. That's bad management. If this happens the first time, which it never should have, like this is very bad behavior on Louis C.K.'s part, I would expect a good manager to be like, hey, I heard this story from some comedians that you were at a festival with, shut it the fuck down or I won't manage you anymore. Like that's how you manage it well, that's how you mitigate it. You don't just keep sweeping this under the rug for years and years and years and then hope that you don't get a New York Times piece published against you. Well, sorry, it happened, and Dave Becky sucks.
Also, the New York Times,
he got called out. He sucks.
The New York Times being like, is it the Regina George or like that one person in high school who can make things real? Like it's happening now. Like everyone else has been saying, can you believe that this fetch, and it's not till Regina George says fetch is happening now, that it's happening.
Gawker talked about this in 2012.
What's sad about, like Grace, you touched on Dave Becky and how Louis C.K. made it a point to like make sure he wasn't complicit. But what sucks about this whole Louis C.K. thing is also all the projects he had and the people that were employed working that were depending on him for their livelihood. That are collateral damage, that didn't know he was doing things, because not everyone knows what's going on behind the scenes. Like if I'm like a PA on A Dog's Life 5, I don't know Louis C.K.'s rubbing one out, in his trailer. I'm just showing up to work. And if that show gets canceled now, I don't have a job. Right, I'm going on unemployment, so it's just like there's so much collateral damage that goes into effect when this comes to fruition. There's a lot that there is to talk about that we didn't get to in this video, but keep checking back. And we also talked about it in the George Takei video that we did earlier. And if what's past is prologue, we will do hundreds and hundreds of videos about all the pervy creepos in Hollywood. So check back for that. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Pop Trigger.